Welcome to the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors meeting this day, April 10th, 2018. We have returned from closed session. Liz, is there anything to report out of closed session today?
Yes, with a motion by Supervisor Cowan and a second by Supervisor Berkowitz, the board voted 5-0 to intervene in an action. The time the complaint is filed will be made public.
Thank you, Liz. I'd like to pause briefly for a moment of reflection. Supervisor Gitlin, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Introduction of new employees. Jay or Heather? Nobody today. All right.
Wait, I have one.
Oh, whoa. Whoa. Terrific. Liz, we don't often have you up here.
No, because we don't have very many
This
attorneys.
is great.
But this is Jacqueline Roberts. She's joining us as a deputy too. She's from Los Angeles, and she's going to be working mostly with the Department of Health and Human Services. She's been a dependency attorney for 4 years, and so we're very happy to have her in our office. And
I'm excited.
We're excited to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. All right. Right on schedule. Let's go ahead and take up the consent agenda items then at this time.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a point of order. I noticed
Please.
that there's on our agenda, we've deleted any additions, subtractions, and changes to the amendment, but that provided an opportunity to introduce for a future meeting, which
Sure.
I'd like to do at this time. Each of us on this board has taken an oath of office, pledging allegiance to uphold the Constitution of both the United States of America and to the state of California. Regrettably, I'm in conflict. I don't know if my other board members are, colleagues are also, but I'm in conflict with Sanctuary State SB 54, which is clearly unconstitutional to the federal position. So I'd like to ask our board to place on the agenda for 424 to add section 9.30, which is the Constitution of the United States U.S. Code, that we be in compliance, which compels our adhering to federal supremacy law and exempting Del Norte County from the California Values Act, SB 54.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to concur in that request.
Okay. And this might be a lengthy discussion. I'd like to actually revisit this particular motion by Supervisor Gitlin and your second, Supervisor Berkowitz, actually a little later, if possible, instead of discussing it right now, if possible. Is that okay with both of you?
I'm not quite sure. It's not on the agenda to discuss this.
I know. Whether or not to agendize it as a board meeting, because I think the board will want to discuss it at this time, whether or not we will agendize it, since we did address it last year.
If you're asking if I agree with it, I do not. Well, I don't see it. There's any opportunity. Please show me in the agenda where we can discuss SB 54 if I missed something.
Under board reports is generally...
board reports.
That's okay. We could do it now if you'd like.
I'm fine with, I think
Okay.
we need to come to some kind of, whether something happened last year or not. I've received no shortage of phone calls from people throughout our county objecting to SB 54, and there's precedent in the fact that there are other governances, not that that matters, has also engaged in opposing SB 54 and asking for exemption. I'm asking that we join other counties and cities who are contemplating this, or in fact have already done this. Well, if you want to put it up during board reports, it's fine. I'd like it to be on the 424 agenda where people can see it and come to it and address it at that time. So that would be my request.
Understood. I just feel if that's what's going to happen, this might involve a little bit of discussion and understanding your motion correctly, because I think your motion actually potentially puts the county in an interesting position. I want county council to weigh into that fully before we decide to move forward with that. So I know we're kind of tight on schedule this morning, but I definitely want to revisit here maybe during our board reports, if that's okay with you.
No, it's not.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, Liz, proper procedure. Should we open up for discussion now? Or is,
So I think, you know, when you ask for something to be agendized, it can't be discussed. It can just be put on the next agenda for, you know, discussion. So
there's-
we shouldn't,
yeah.
you know, have it as a discussion item or.
is it, if there's disagreement of the board whether or not to even agendize it at this time, or even for the 424 meeting with the specific motion, which I want Supervisor Gitlin to clarify before we move forward with that.
Well, you could put it on the next board meeting as an action item about whether or not you want to have a forum on this topic or whatever. You know, as far as the litigation side of it, there's some new developments, and we definitely would need some more time if that's something the board directs staff to do, as far as looking into those.
Certainly. Okay. So we have a motion, a second by Supervisor Berkowitz.
So I think it's just like a consensus to put it on.
Do we have
for-
consensus to put it on to 424?
That's your discretion.
We have a pretty full meeting next month. I do believe that. Maybe the first meeting in May, if that's okay?
I'm just not understanding the logic. Full meeting, short meeting, long meeting. I think it's timely and it be addressed as soon as possible. Can't have it at this meeting because it hasn't received a 72-hour notice. Let's put it on the next meeting. If some of us up here have to work a little longer during the course of our day, so be it. This is an important
All right.
matter. I'm in violation of my oath that I took 6.5, 7 years ago when I came into this office and reaffirmed before. I'm in violation of that if I vote to accept SB 54 as the law of the land. And I'm using the federal mandate, section 9.30. This has been done before, and proud to say that Los Alamitos set the precedent, and the County of Orange has also done the same. I'd like to see it on the 424 agenda.
Well, both those counties and the city has taken.
We're not
different
discussing
steps.
this. We're talking
I
about placing this on
understand.
the
I'll
agenda,
take-
Mr. Chairman.
I'll take it under consideration, Supervisor Gitlin. And thank you, Supervisor Berkowitz, for also making that secondary motion. I'll take it under consideration for our 424 meeting. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move forward then with public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you're addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold the comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please, not everybody at once.
Eileen Cooper. Good morning. And just because this item that has been brought up about sanctuary cities, I, as a citizen of this country who has been founded on immigrants, that we came to this land and took it over from natives, both Native Americans, as people with white skin, and we took over Mexican land through violence, and I don't think building walls in this time of history is the appropriate thing to do. In my heart, I see the climate change of the world and the conflicts of the world making life so difficult in small nations where a single river drying up can wipe out a population. Kilimanjaro is losing all its snow. What will the people in Africa do? Europe is having its problems with immigration. We will be having our problems. Parts of our nation will become deserts if we lose glaciers, where towns can't be supported by water. California's not going to put up borders saying you can't come to our state. Well, the world is going to have to embrace and open its arms to the fact that people will need to move where resources, food, and water exist for existence. And for us in this time of history to close our doors is inhumane. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Other public comment at this time? Please. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Terry Safahan. I'm affiliated with and the director of the True North Organizing Network. And I just have 2 comments to make. I said last year, and I'll say again, that unless you are a Yurok or Tolowa Indian, then you are an immigrant to this land. That's one. Secondly, what I heard last night at the candidates forum at Fort Dick was every single challenger running for the seats on this board were morally opposed, indicated their moral indignation and outrage to the growing cultivation and consumption of cannabis. However, they are working to implement it. I'm not sure what constitutional considerations they might be under, but they don't appreciate the division between the federal, state, and local governments around the issue of growing marijuana and cannabis. Now, if they can put aside their moral differences to move forward on trying to figure out how to address what the citizens of California have passed, I would hope that this board could also set aside their moral indignation and difference with regards to Senate Bill 54 and protection and concern for all people, including our undocumented citizens in this county and in this state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I am Dana Gilport. I'm the pastor at the Methodist Church here in Crescent City. I am still relatively new to the community, so thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak. And forgive me, I use religious language. You can use no other language than religious language. And as a pastor of the Methodist Church, we are called to love the stranger just as Jesus was accepting and loving of the strangers in communities. After his crucifixion and in Easter, his disciples were in hiding and they were running from the authority figures. We are called to love all, and that includes documented and undocumented workers and citizens here. We were founded, our forefathers founded our nation on immigration and freedom to come here and seek asylum, and I think that we in Del Norte should uphold that and let California law enforcement do their job. They are called to be California peace officers over federal peace officers. We have federal peace officers to do that thing, so I'm just speaking in favor of keeping this county as a sanctuary state and continuing to uphold our agreement of last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment? Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on down.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Manuel Vidal Saavedra Herrera. I think it's funny that we're speaking about the legality of these issues, specifically immigration. It wasn't too long ago where African Americans were enslaved and that was deemed legal. And we all know that we had, as a community, as a society, we had to do we had to do things that were deemed illegal for the liberation of our communities. Now, it doesn't surprise me that you, Roger Gitlin, and Bob Berkowitz are wanting to withdraw from the agenda of California, an agenda that has been listening to their constituents. And Roger Gitlin, I am your constituents, and that statement, you are not representing me at all. So I just wanted to say that. So the statements that we made a while back ago, or that y'all made a while back ago, about sending a letter of support to keeping the relationship between ICE and our local sheriff's department, SB 54 had barely come out, and it was a piece of legislation that obviously when we had that meeting, y'all didn't even look at, or y'all could not comprehend what it actually stated. You were picking bits and pieces, and in trying to welcome ICE law enforcement here in Del Norte County. And now that we're able to kind of actually take a look at the legislation and read it carefully, we are seeing that it's actually in support of our undocumented heroes, of our families. And the fact that y'all are using legislation, or you're using our current administration that's in the White House, their agenda, you're being complicit to a agenda that is completely against anybody that does not look like you, Roger Gitlin, and look like you, I mean white man, Trump is trying to systemically wipe my community out, and that is a fact, with massive deportation rates, with criminalization of people that are undocumented and people of color. I think that we forget that it's not just a matter of legality, it's a matter of families being torn apart. And I find it really repulsive that we could scapegoat and use dog whistle politics at this time specifically to try to move away from the agenda of California, which again is an agenda built by its constituents of protecting undocumented community members. And I think you are not representing me at all. You are not representing my family. You are representing the people that are in your inner circle, and people that look like you, and people that don't have these problems of fears of deportation. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment at this time? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. We're going to move to our 10:15 timed agenda item, which is receive an update on the Tsunami Preparedness Week from Jay Serena.
So I believe everybody was probably aware of the fact that we had a Tsunami Preparedness Week, but also some testing that occurred. During that week, it was a concerted effort to try to get awareness out to the public while also testing some of the systems that are in place. It was based on a distant source tsunami, so it wasn't the subduction zone immediate type of an emergency. What ended up happening through that and what some of the goals were to test the readiness of the emergency alert system, so people would have seen some of the notices come across television and radio. There was an activation of the outdoor sirens so that we could test which ones were actually able to be activated automatically and then which ones may need to be done manually. There was NOAA all hazards activation on our radios, so if you have the emergency radio, you would have gotten that. Civil Air Patrol flew from Mendocino all the way to the border, and they did some public address system testing while they were in the air. Social media was blown up as much as possible in order to show that there was, the testing was happening. There was an opportunity for people to exercise their individual plans if they have them, also other agencies. And again, primarily to provide awareness of tsunami and earthquake principles and the response. Our Everbridge system, which is our alert system, was activated. And so if you have signed up for Everbridge, you would have gotten texts, phone calls, possibly emails, whatever you have signed up for. If you haven't signed up for it, this is where I get to make the plug. Go to preparedelnorte.com, and if you have any questions after that, call County Emergency Services, and we will help you get signed up. There are a tremendous number, over 5,000 people who have voluntarily signed up, and then a lot of 911 people that are also on there. Also on that, we activated a survey. It's a very short little survey in regards to how people were notified, and I believe we had 472 responses. So overall, it was very positive. I think we do find when we go through these that there are some glitches that we got to correct. That's the whole idea for going through this. Some of the other counties went with additional types of activation and testing. Ultimately, we'll probably be going through in about a year, maybe 2 years, we'll be going through a full-scale evacuation again like we have done in the past. And a lot of thanks go out to all of the individuals that make this happen. Locally, Dennis Louie and Peter Craig were responsible for all of the signs that you see along with businesses along the 101 corridor, alerting people and visitors that there are tests going on so people didn't panic. And obviously the National Weather Service, State OES, and County OES were involved in all of this. So if anybody has any questions, please use the website, use the phone. We will try to get you answers if there's anything that you have questions about on individual preparedness or what the county does. We can go over all of that.
Great. Thank you for your report, Jay. And I know this is well-timed in the sense that as we begin to develop relations with our sister city, Riches and Tecate, and the culmination of our meeting on Monday with the city as their delegation comes here to Crescent City, Del Norte County, tsunami preparedness, I think, is on all our minds. And important tests like this, I think the more awareness that we have in the community, the more our residents will be prepared and how to react in case of a natural disaster as such. We also wanted to thank the meeting that you had for us with Lori Dangler and Troy McLeany. It was great to have the elected officials present that were able to make it that day and really learn what our department, in particular OES, has gone through to prepare for this. And as was stated during that, we're the most prepared community on the Pacific Coast in the event of a tsunami occurring. How do we react to that as a general public, I think, is the big piece here. And I do, in culmination of this delegation coming here from Riches and Tecate, Japan on Monday, Tuesday next week, I really want this tsunami preparedness piece to continue. And I think our communication as elected officials to members of the public out there, through encouraging as we're getting out there and seeing folks to sign up for that Everbridge system, those communication pieces that we do have in place. And I know we have about 28,000 people here in our community, but the sign up currently for the Everbridge system is not there yet. I think if I remember correctly, Jay, you stated to me last time we're about 8,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, there's the overall group is probably around 8,000. And we would like to get that obviously at 100%. And some
Correct.
of those people are not necessarily local either.
Sure.
So, you know, we will continue to get the word out. It's been noted over the last month or two, one of the goals of the board and the city council is to get more information to our residents as well as our visitors. You know, there's brochures, there's a number of different ways to get the word out, but we will continue to do that and to the best of our ability make sure people are aware of where to go and when to go when they feel either the shaking that lasts for a minute, 30 seconds or more, and then also the alert system for those types of emergencies that we can plan for over a period of time.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Comments from the board?
I'm just kind of curious, how many people in the audience are signed up? That's a good percentage. The rest of you, I think you need to go online.
Supervisor Berkowitz.
Yeah, I would think one of the problems with it was over TV with DirecTV and also Dish, which of course there is no crawl on that, so it makes it more imperative that we have people signed up with Everbridge.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Let's go ahead and open up to the public in case the public has any comments or what they experienced during that preparedness drill. We'd be welcome to your input at this time. Great. Well, we'll keep you apprised and hope you could all join us. I know we have a little item on our agenda later for the approval of the resolution with the City of Richardson, Takata, Japan, but in essence, tsunami preparedness is so extremely important to us in our community. We're going to go ahead and move on with our consent agenda at this time. This is items number 4 through 20 on your agenda. Do I have a motion on the table?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
And I have a second. Let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Public comment on consent agenda items only. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Howard, members of the board, CAO Serena, County Council. My name is Patrick Hickey. I'm the field representative for SEIU Local 1021, and I'm here this morning to speak in favor of item 11, which regards the SB1 list of road projects for the 2018-2019 budget year. With the anticipated receipt of nearly $1 million from the SB1 gas tax funds, the county will have an opportunity to address some long-delayed road improvement and road maintenance projects, which is a wonderful thing. You have a very hard-working and dedicated road division that does an excellent job for the county, a very small group that does an amazing work. They definitely go above and beyond, rain or shine. They're out there taking care of our roads, keeping us safe. So I want to give them that credit that they well deserve. With this enhanced funding, we are urging the board to consider using a portion of this new money to increase salaries in the road department to be more in line with comparable counties, and to demonstrate to this hard-working group that their efforts are recognized. They are anywhere from 10 to 15% below other counties that are in line with Del Norte. So, it's a constant challenge to recruit and retain good employees like you have. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Other public comment on consent agenda items? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. As part of the consent agenda, we had a resolution on there that I'd like Supervisor Hemmingson to read at this time.
Yes, thank you. This is a resolution of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, honoring Supervisor Charles Chuck W. Blackburn. Whereas Charles W. Chuck Blackburn began his career with Del Norte County when he was elected to office as Supervisor District 3 and took his oath of office January of 1999. And whereas Chuck served 2 terms as District 3 Supervisor, including 1 year as Chairman in 2002. And whereas Chuck was an original member of the Del Norte County Fish and Game Advisory Commission, from which his interest in local resource issues prompted him to run for Supervisor. And whereas Chuck's first foray into politics was to successfully fight the proposed closure of fishing on the South Fork of the Smith River above the Go Road Bridge. And whereas Chuck, during his career with Del Norte County, whereas during his career with Del Norte County, Chuck worked diligently on a number of issues important to our community, such as secure rural schools and Roads Act funding, state fish and game regulations, economic development and business support, and any project that could result in a betterment of the community. And whereas Chuck steadfastly promoted positive dialogue, compromise, and the ability to agree to disagree, while always maintaining a positive attitude and no hard feeling. And whereas Chuck was proud to represent his constituents regardless of what district they lived in, and whereas Chuck was a positive influence within our community, and most importantly, Chuck was a positive influence on the children of our community. And whereas Chuck was renowned for never meeting a stranger and always having a pleasant smile and greeting for all of his friends. And whereas Chuck foremost was a father, a grandfather, husband, educator, golfer, fishing guide, coach, broadcaster, mentor, and friend. And whereas Chuck was a golf, basketball, weightlifting, wrestling, and gymnastics coach and physical education teacher at Crescent Elk Middle School and Del Norte High School. And whereas Chuck assisted in facilitating the construction of the Crescent Elk Gymnasium and the initiation of JC's basketball tournament, coaching 3 of his Crescent Elk Cougars teams to championships, and whereas the phrase, "Holy Toledo," will never be uttered in Del Norte County without everyone picturing Chuck Blackburn, the voice of the Warriors, broadcasting local athletics and faithfully and enthusiastically cheering on the youth of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby acknowledges the dedication of Chuck Blackburn during his years of service to Del Norte County and his many more years of positive influence within his community, and furthermore thanks Chuck's family for sharing him with us. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, this 10th day of April 2018 by unanimous poll vote.
Mr. Chairman, supervisors, and county staff, believe it or not, this is the first time I've ever spoken in front of all of you, or even during Chuck's time. On behalf of our family, I thank you for this resolution recognizing Chuck's dedication to this community. As you all know, Chuck's forte was communication. He believed that good communication involved active listening as others shared their perspectives, rather than focusing on what he would say next. He called it dialogue and believed that seeking common ground and building consensus was the best way to find the solution to varied perspectives on important issues. He loved people and was passionate about anything related to his home, to Del Norte County. Mentoring students, inspiring self-esteem, character building, and teamwork were also his passion. It is my hope that Del Norte County and this community can and will continue to strive for building consensus in spite of differing perspectives on all of the issues with which you deal every day. This community needs your leadership. Thank you again.
Thank you, Missy.
I'm Charlene, Chuck's oldest daughter. Like my father, I've chosen to serve our wonderful county. I'm an employee of Del Norte County and proud to be an employee of Del Norte County. My dad so loved this community. When my mother was here after his service, we drove by the corner here and noticed the flags at half-staff. Our family so much appreciated that. He loved this community so much. And I just want to thank you all.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity in case anybody from the board wants to say anything about Chuck at this time. Please, Supervisor Berkowitz.
You know, Chuck and I were great friends. We didn't find out until much later that both of us graduated from the same high school in the Bay Area. So we had lots of memories going all the way back, and then he and I worked on the secure rural schools legislation, he with the county and myself with the school district. It was a great partnership. He was always a great friend and a true mentor to me, and I miss him greatly.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gitlin.
Guys, I lost a dear friend, one who was more than inspirational to me. We seem to have grown particularly close in the last year. I'm going to miss his phone calls. I'm going to miss his input. Chuck was a tremendous influence on my political career here as an elected supervisor. And all I can say is we've all lost here. And he was a treasure to our community and to this earth. During your grieving period, I'm sorry I couldn't attend the actual event. During this grieving period, I hope it will reflect and kind of assume Chuck's persona within us in a short way, that his influence will continue. And I wish you well as you grieve during this tough period. Thank you.
Supervisor Cowan.
I got to know Chuck, fairly well over the last few years, but spent a lot of time with him just in the last year. He was a big influence to me. I always could pick up the phone and call him, and he would call me when he thought I needed to know something. And, I've said it to you, Missy, I'm so sorry, and Charlene, for your loss and your family's loss. I can't imagine. He's going to be missed by all of us, but I know especially by you guys, and I'll miss his Hey Gals, always.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's just not words. Chuck, I've known Chuck for, I hate to say how long, 45 plus years. He's the reason, or at least one of the reasons why I'm sitting here. He's one of the ones that talked me into, or helped talk me into running for supervisor back in the day, 12 years ago. And I'm certainly thankful for that. He was a great influence. If you knew Chuck, he influenced you because he was that powerful of a presence. So he will surely be missed by everyone who ever had the good fortune to meet him.
Thank you. This has been tough on all of us. My first exposure to Chuck was in 1994 when Barbara Clausen appointed us both to the Delaware County Fish and Game Commission, and I got to see the diplomacy that you spoke about. During one of the most contentious issues I think that we had experienced right out of the gate, which was bird lovers versus cat lovers. And it was very contentious. We had several meetings over it, and Chuck was chair at the time. He handled things so well because you had a group of folks that believed that all the wild birds were being eaten by the cats, and then you had the folks that wanted to protect the feral cats in our community, and we had to come to some kind of agreement, and we did. Believe it or not, we did, and that was through Chuck's leadership. It was agreed upon that somehow we would try to find these populations of feral cats, and I think Rick Leather at the time decided to build off of Kings Valley Road an enclosure. And that was the culmination of what I saw was an incredible talent and love for this community, and it wasn't long thereafter that Chuck decided to run for the Board of Supervisors. And of course, like Jerry, Chuck and I had a lot of discussion about me running personally for the board, and I'll never forget that encouragement, because it is a big step for all of us as electeds to represent this community, because I think we all share this similar passion that Chuck shares for this community. So I just want to say thank you to the family, and Danny, I know we spoke not too long after the memorial, and I wish you could be here. Your father meant a lot to all of us, so thank you. Supervisor Berkowitz, I believe there's some proclamations that need to be read.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This in support of the April 2018 Sexual Assault Awareness and Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas sexualization violence affects children, youth, adults, and elders of all generations from all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds, with public health and social justice implications for every person in Delaware County. And whereas it is estimated that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 7 boys will be sexually victimized by the age of 18. Whereas sex trafficking and exploitation happens in our county, disproportionately impacting the lives of youth, young adults in our community, and whereas survivors are often blamed while the perpetrators are excused, leading to a lack of justice and a continuation of violence. And whereas the Me Too movement has raised public awareness and given voice to the survivors. And whereas staff and volunteers of the North Coast Rape Crisis Team provide 24-hour services to survivors and their significant others to support those impacted and ensure survivors are not re-victimized. And whereas promotion of best practices responses is accomplished through multidisciplinary teams, such as the Sexual Assault Response Team, as well as partnership with governmental, tribal, and community-based organizations. And whereas the North Coast Rape Crisis Team provides prevention, education, self-defense, and awareness-raising programs, encouraging every person to participate in ending sexualized violence and promoting social justice. And now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that the Delaware County Board of Supervisors reaffirms its commitment to the North Coast Rape Crisis Team and its vision, a world without violence, and acknowledges April 18th, 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness and Child Abuse Prevention Month, passed and adopted this 10th day of April 2018 by the Board of Supervisors. Do we have somebody that can accept this?
Hi, my name is Liz Hutchins, and I'm with the North Coast Rape Crisis Team. Sorry, I'm very emotional, but this proclamation means a lot. Too often we see the injustices for the youth, adults, and people who are victimized in this county and all over the world. And it's with your help and your assisting us in getting the word out and participating in all of the events that we do throughout the month that assists us in ending violence, because you know that our mission is a world, or our vision is a world without violence. And wouldn't we just love to all see that? You'll notice, I think you might be getting packets, or you'll receive a packet. Yes. So the long sheet has a list of events. Some of the events have already happened, and I did see some of you at the Youth and Family Fair. That's on there. But there are additional events, and we want to draw your attention to April 25th as Jeans for Justice. And what that's about is about an Italian high court who overturned a rape conviction, stating that the victim was wearing jeans, and without the her consent or permission to remove those jeans, that there would be need to be some help on her part to remove them. So this is an outcry to end victim blaming, and we know for a fact that this is why victims are blamed. It's because these types of things still occur. So we ask that you guys show support and wear jeans if you're able to on April 25th for Jeans for Justice. You might also know it as Denim Day. To please wear jeans on that day, or if not, you have a sticker in your packet, and to please spread the word. You also have a blurb that explains it. And I just want to thank everybody for your support in the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair Howard. This is a proclamation supporting the designation of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas the Delaware County Board of Supervisors recognize that from every moment of a child's life is an opportunity to learn, and that quality of these experiences may determine whether a child succeeds in school or in life, and that all children need caring and loving adults in their life. And whereas the county acknowledges that our children are our greatest resource and that our future will be determined by their innovative talents, ideas, and leadership. And whereas the role of our community members is to accept the responsibility of ensuring that every child experiences an environment at home, in preschool, in family child care homes, in our neighborhoods, and at school that will promote the best possible development. And whereas our community has a responsibility of offering parents the education, support, and skills needed to provide healthy, safe, and nurturing homes for their children. Now therefore be it resolved that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and urges the community to support the efforts of the Del Norte Child Abuse Prevention Council, First 5 Del Norte Child Care Council, Family Resource Center of the Redwoods, Del Norte County Juvenile Courts, CASA of Del Norte County Health and Human Services, the Del Norte Unified School District, the City of Crescent City, licensed foster care homes, public and private agencies, and programs advocating for children in Crescent City, and parents who already provide a safe, loving, and nurturing environments to their children free of any outside intervention. Passed and adopted this 10th day of April 2018. Thanks, Miss Jen. Thank you, ladies, for all your work.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Baldwin, and I work at the Del Norte Child Care Council. I am currently the vice chair for the CAPC. And I would like to take the moment for thanking you for proclaiming April the Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. I did bring everybody a pinwheel for prevention that we will have handed out. But I would like to invite everyone to the flag raising ceremony tomorrow night. And I know it's bad weather, but we will be at the fairgrounds underneath where the door rises into the main building. We have a special speaker this year, and she's 10 years old. Her name is Helena, and she has this wonderful speech about child abuse and awareness. And the Sacramento heard that we are having a youth vision perspective, and we're recording her message, and it's going to be sent statewide. We would love to have everyone there and hear her message to our city.
Just let us know what time we need to be there.
It starts at 5:30.
We'll be in Oakland.
We'll be in Oakland.
5:30.
Tomorrow evening at 5:30.
Yes, tomorrow evening. You want to say something about round table?
6:30.
Eric?
Okay.
Hello.
Sheriff.
I can't say much that Vicki hasn't said. I have the privilege of serving with her on the CAPC board, and she is my vice chair, but she's definitely doing all the heavy lifting along with everybody else up here, and a couple people that aren't here today. A lot of good things happening in the community. We need to try to be involved. I've also had the opportunity of listening to Helena speak before. We have kind of a special relationship, and she is an incredible example of the youth in this community. So if you get a chance to tune in, it sounds like it'll be recorded. Take the opportunity to do that, and she's one of our local kids, so if you can reach out to her and show support, I'm sure that would go a long way.
Do you know where it's going to be recorded at? And any information on that? Or could you get that to us?
I'm sure we can send that to you directly. We're going to be recording it,
Okay.
So we can get it to you.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on with our regular agenda items, which is item 21, a budget transfer. Approve and authorize the transfer of item number 04-01 in the amount of $83.55 with the sheriff's budget to cover the unexpected revenue of special security needed for the production of a movie located in Del Norte County as requested by Sheriff Portner.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve
Second?
and a second. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, and we'll move to item number 22. Approve and authorize the chair to sign the sister city agreement between the city of Crescent City and the city of Riches and Takata, Japan, as requested by the county administrative officer. Jay?
Well, I think you can probably explain this better than I can, since this is something that you've been involved in, but as the item says, it would be signing the sister city agreement that has been signed already by the city of Rikus and Takata, and we'll follow up with, perhaps you want to discuss next Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I haven't been doing too good at speaking today, so maybe Supervisor Cowan or Supervisor Berkowitz could help me out with this.
We have a delegation of 20, I believe, are coming in from Rikus and Takata on Sunday night on Contour Air. Yay. And they'll be spending a couple days with us. Monday night, it's really important. We'd like to invite the whole community out at 6 p.m. at the Cultural Center. We'll be doing a ceremony and talking more about this agreement. And we're doing some type of a joint, aren't we? Do city county there as well. But they'll be going around and seeing and touring the area on Monday and Tuesday. So again, we invite all of you, please come out Monday night to the Cultural Center at 6 and meet them and let them know that they're welcomed here. They have been very, very gracious to all of us and the different people who have gone over to Ricketts and Takata from Del Norte over the years, both the students, teachers, public officials, business leaders. They've been very, very gracious to us, and we're excited to have them come over as well. Did I miss anything?
No. I know Supervisor Berkowitz is going to be helping out with the delegation's tour next week, as well as you, Supervisor Cowan. I really appreciate all the involvement of the board to help get us there. Again, as reflecting back on Samantha Fuller's presentation of the board 2 weeks ago, again, you know, the kids in our community really saw well beyond where I thought we'd go with this, which was, you know, solidifying this relationship with this sister city agreement. It means a lot more than just a back and forth handshake across the ocean. It means that we can learn from a community that is very similar to ours in preparation for natural disaster, something that we've spoken about earlier today. If we could just learn that one simple thing and the experiences they've gone through that could potentially culminate in saving more lives within our community, I think we'll have done our job as a community in reaching across that ocean. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we learn from each other, definitely learning from their experiences and how it applies to us, and how we can make our community more tsunami aware and more tsunami ready.
Thank you. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and open this item up for public comment. Okay, seeing none, we're going to just go ahead and bring it back to the board. Do we have a motion on the
Make a
table?
motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign the sister city agreement.
Second.
Thank you. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor Gitlin?
Yes.
Supervisor Berkowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Cowan?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on with item number 23 at this time, which is direct staff to draft a letter of support for AB 2754, which clarifies the ongoing and routine agricultural activities taking place in the California Coastal Zone are not considered development in accordance with the California Coastal Act as requested by Chair Howard. Randy is here with us today, and we've discussed this a little along with county council. I'd like Randy, if you have time, to talk to the board a little bit about this, because I know it occurs here in my district in particular, and also Supervisor Hemmingson's district, agricultural activities, but there's a lot more in detail to this particular assembly bill that I'd like you to help clarify for the board before we make the decision to direct staff.
Morning, Chair Howard, members of the board.
Good morning, Randy.
Yeah, basically what this proposed piece of legislation would do would bring two separate items in statute into more consistency with each other. Presently, under some of the provisions under the Coastal Act, development is very broadly defined, and there's other provisions that are more specific to agriculture, separate from the Coastal Act, which actually make exemptions for routine agricultural activities. And so what this bill would do would be to essentially bring those issues into consistency with each other, providing for additional exemptions under the Coastal Act for these certain agricultural activities. And we'll have more report on it after the letter's presented, but in a, kind of in a tight little summary, that's what this would do.
Do you know what kind of schedule it is on within the assembly and when it will go before committee?
At this point, we don't have those details. I think it's very preliminary. The request that came in through the Office of County Counsel was through RCRC, seeking to establish a position for RCRC to take on it. I think it's very preliminary, but it's certainly something that we'd like to support, as I think the consensus of the board and certainly of staff is that there's a lot of overreach within the Coastal Act. This certainly wouldn't fully resolve, but it would be a step in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and open up for public comment at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and come on up, Eileen. You caught me just in time. I'll give IT a note about that.
Hello,
Good morning
Eileen
again.
Cooper, Delmar County. The Coastal Act, with regards to agriculture and wetlands, is a balancing act. Where the Coastal Act says no, is that please go ahead and farm the wetlands, plant your crops, till to a certain degree. Where the Coastal Act stops giving permission for agriculture is when a farmer permanently changes the contours of the field, that in a way that drains wetland areas. Dredging, diking, significant effects to wetlands that he's permitted under the Coastal Act to farm. So where this bill, how this bill deals with that in its reference to tilling is questionable. And there are limits to tilling. It's surface tilling to produce your crops. But you cannot, just because you don't like a wet area in a field, you cannot fill that. And we have in this community had difficulty over this issue and the boundaries that are set in the Coastal Act. This bill will not, if it does not fully explain that, it's not going to help with any kind of clarity. The Coastal Act is pretty clear about that already. So I would like more clarity as to the actual limits and the significant effects, making both sides of where that balancing act is. Because, I don't like seeing farmers say, going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And now you're stuck with a lot of mitigation work. That's not good either. So, I don't know if this bill helps with that issue. It seems to not give a lot of clarity to that. Anyway, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Other public comment at this time? Thank you, Randy. I think this bill will help offer some clarity to the Coastal Act, and more importantly, a perspective from Del Norte County farmers that could potentially weigh in on this letter to the Board of Supervisors and sending some of our clarity and experiences within agricultural lands in Del Norte County to the State Assembly. Anyways, with that being said, I'd like to know if there's a consensus to move forward to direct staff to write a letter for us to weigh in on. Okay, we have consensus. Thank you, Randy, for your short and brief presentation. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on with our 11 o'clock timed agenda item, which is receive a presentation by County Council on personal cultivation and taxation of cannabis, and discuss and direct staff as necessary, requested by County Council. Good morning, Joel. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Supervisors. Good to be here. Give the machine a second. So the purpose of this little chat, these aren't ordinances in front of the board right now, but they will be soon. And we have some procedural issues to kind of plan for. One is the tax ordinance has to go to the ballot in November. It has to be at a general election, so we kind of have a shot at this now, and then it'll be a long time before we can do it again. So instead of just bringing an ordinance forward, I thought we'd present the details of what the working group has come up with and see if the board wants to change it or hates it, loves it, and then bring the ordinance forward. The same with the personal cultivation is going to go to the Planning Commission. That's a month to 6 weeks and some money publishing. If the board really has some changes, let's fix them first. But we're not presenting the actual ordinances because there is a process to those, and so we're kind of just getting into details and bullet points. These are, let's talk about tax first. The county has specific authority to tax legal activity, and in cannabis, it's activity that's licensed. So this is not going to be a tax on all cannabis activity, whether licensed or not, and we can go out and bust illegal grows for not paying their taxes like Al Capone. This is specifically, if they have a license from the state, we can tax it. The same is true from our more general grant of authority. It's lawful business. Right now, there's no lawful business. We've got a ban in place. But because this is a process going to take until November, we're anticipating the board repealing that ban and instituting something. So it doesn't really matter what the board eventually chooses as a specific ordinance. This tax will tax cultivation, retail, and manufacturing. So whatever the board ends up doing with those, the tax will be in place. And if the board never legalizes them, there'll be a tax on the books that obviously won't be collected. So this will be submitted as a referendum, and it must be passed by a 2/3 vote of this board. 2/3 of 5 is 4. So it's a supermajority vote. And then it'll go to the public, and if it is a special tax where the money is reserved for a specific purpose, the electorate must vote 2/3. If it's a general tax, it's a simple majority. The ordinance that we have drafted is a general tax. It's not a specific tax. There's an electoral advantage that's presumed when you set the money aside, because then you get the public on board with that purpose. You set it aside for children or for the sheriff or something. It's believed that people will be more likely to tax themselves. So because you get the electoral advantage of specifying a purpose, you have to hit a higher threshold. We've made this a general tax because even though a good percentage of the people of Del Norte County voted to legalize marijuana, if they really want to use marijuana, they might not want to tax themselves. The simple majority is the safer bet because it's a long process to institute a tax. You know, we made it a simple majority. That can be something the board can change if you have thoughts on it. Another reason is that even though we're supposed to cover our costs with permit fees and fines, it never really seems to happen that way. So if all the tax went to a specific purpose and code enforcement didn't have any access to it, or the sheriff didn't have any access to it, you know, we could be really limiting our ability to break even on cannabis. This is in the unincorporated areas of the county. We're not taxing any activity that goes on in the city. And these are the numbers the working group is proposing. It's 2 to 6% of gross receipts of retail on the adult use, not the medical. 1 to 3% of gross receipts on manufacturing, $1 per square foot of permitted outdoor cultivation, and $3 a square foot of permitted indoor cultivation. So this gross receipts number is not a sales tax. It's not in addition to the dollar amount you pay. It is part of it. So if you get charged $1 for cannabis, the retail will turn around and pay 2 to 6% of that dollar. It doesn't charge you $1 and then throw on 2 to 6% like a sales tax. And it will include state taxes in that dollar amount. So there's kind of some compounding of taxes, but we're limited in our ability to impose a sales tax, both by our specific grant for cannabis authority and by the Bradley-Burns uniform sales tax law. So it will be calculated a little bit differently. We do quarterly returns, kind of like, a lot of it is actually styled on the TOT ordinance with the same kind of enforcement mechanism. We'll get into that a little bit more. The voters have to approve the maximum tax, but as long as the board stays within the range the voters approve, the board can set the specific tax by resolution. The working group thought 6% was a reasonable maximum to, I guess, raise money but not discourage the industry. They also put a floor on it, thinking that, you know, cannabis industries do deserve to bear some tax responsibility. So if the board wants to say 3, if the board wants to say 6, if it looks like the industry is struggling under 6% tax and the board wants to change it down to a 4, all that is something that can be done by resolution, pretty informally. The square foot on cultivation is square foot on the amount of cultivation that's permitted, not the amount of cultivation that's undertaken. So if you have a permit for 1,000 square feet and it's $1, that's $1,000 you just owe. And you owe it before you plant as a condition of your permit. And so this one was not styled as an adjustable rate by the board. It's $1 for outdoor, $3 for indoor. Indoor being significantly more productive per square foot economically. And again, it's a lot like the TOT ordinance. You got a schedule of fines for late fees, interest, and then ultimately you end up with a tax lien on your property before foreclosed in 3 years. It's like a judgment lien. It's also, if you're operating in violation of a permit condition, you're guilty of a public nuisance. So you have both the tax collector and code enforcement that can enforce against you with their own procedures. A little bit of kind of overlap and backup. And then failure to pay will result in a revocation of your license. Since the state license requires local authorization, if we pull your local permit, you're going to lose your state permit too. So there's a pretty good incentive if you want to continue in business to pay your taxes. The next part of this is personal cultivation. I want to pause and see if the board wants to talk about taxes before we go on. If the board wants to wait until the end and do the whole thing.
What's the board's will? Do you want to address taxes now before we move on, or see the whole presentation? Okay, please proceed.
All right, so the personal cultivation ordinance is the reasonable regulations we're allowed to put on 6 plants. Keep in mind that right now 6 plants is legal with no regulation except the 2 or 3 things the state requires. So literally anything the board does will restrict what's currently legal. These are civil violations subject to our administrative citations and our nuisance process. And they are both public and private nuisances. So if your neighbor's doing something, creating a smell or something, you don't have to wait for the county or rely on the county. old-fashioned nuisance, you can go ahead and take one to court. Comment about the indoor and the outdoor is the way we're going to calculate the cultivation area. It's a single area of contiguous space. So you can't have 10 square feet one place and 10 square feet on the opposite side of your house. You got to keep it together. This kind of controls the amount of overall area, and it calculates, it includes the spaces between your plants. So just draw a perimeter around your plants. That's the square footage you're using. Indoor and outdoor both have to comply with all other building permits and codes. If you're going to alter anything, if you're going to do something that requires an electrical permit, whatever, you have to get it. Your water requirements, you have to have either well or be on city water, septic or on sewage. You can't make any illegal discharges or draw surface water. So the normal things that should apply to anything else, we've just kind of reiterated that they still apply here so people know. They don't have to go digging through other codes to find out the requirements. And then for outdoor, well, I guess for both, locked and not visible from a public space are both state requirements. So they're just reiterated. Allows us to enforce the state requirements. The indoor is 6 plants per single private residence. We've added that should be the primary residence of the grower. This way you're not growing 6 plants in your primary residence and 6 plants in a vacation rental and 6 plants at your friend's house. 100 square feet and comply with all codes. It's a real minimalist approach to avoid code enforcement being in people's houses, having to do a lot of inspecting, a big burden on the county. 100 square feet, the working group thought was reasonable, and staff agreed. Outdoor is the same, 6 plants, and it's that same residence. So I think what is a little bit confusing is if you have 2 residences on a property, you're no longer on the grounds of a single private residence. So if you've got an ADU, well, that would count as a separate dwelling for indoor purposes. The ADU and the main house could both grow 100 square feet. There's no growth allowed outdoor on a property with both of those things because you're on not a single private residence. So ADUs, mobile home parks, apartment complexes, these are all things that by definition, state law, are not allowed. You know, that should kind of assuage some fears that you're going to get some kind of communal growing on an apartment complex, or you know, renters in an ADU are going to have outdoor gardens. It won't be allowed. The working group came up with a tiered system where the farther the setback from your property line you can observe on your property, the more you're allowed to grow. The idea being that the negative effects of the cannabis, largely smell, I think, in most people's minds, will be mitigated by the size and the distance. So, you know, if you can do a 10-foot setback only, and you can observe a height requirement of 6 feet, and you can grow in a container that can be moved around, you get 25 square feet. You can shape it however you want, but it's contiguous square feet. The thought being that if that's as small as it is, it's only 25 square feet, and the plants are limited in height, you shouldn't have a smell issue. It should be small enough in scale and far enough away from your property line, this should be fine. There's also 25-foot setback, so it's not going to end up in a front yard from the front property line. And then in each of these tiers, there's a requirement that it be closer to your own house than your neighbor's house. So even if you are 10 feet away, but your house is far, you know, you still have to have it closer to your own house than your neighbor. So you kind of have this idea that you're close enough to it to exercise enough dominion that you can be responsible for it. Tier 2, 100 square feet with a 40-foot setback and no height requirements. We remove the height requirements for these second 2 tiers because you already can't have it visible from a public right-of-way. And it just becomes an enforcement issue when you got people looking over the fence, trying to gauge how tall it is, calling code enforcement, you know, creating complaints. If it's causing a big smell, you know, it's different. If you're creating a nuisance for some other reason, then we can enforce that. But if you're just growing an 8-foot plant, we don't really want the county involved. Tier 3 is the same thing, but it's a larger area. The 100-foot setback is larger than actually what the working group kind of agreed on. Jesse Davis and I agreed to bump it up after hearing the board's comments at the last meeting. And then the same are other requirements. So this ordinance has not been back in front of the working group. I told them I would show them final draft ordinance for them to kind of consent to and get consensus on. That'll happen on next Wednesday on the 18th. We're kind of multitasking here to get things done faster. So if the board has a big problem with this, I'd love to take that back to the working group on the 18th. Enforcement of this, it's hard to enforce on smell. It's hard to go to the hearing officer and say this place smells awful. It's hard to prove that. It's kind of subjective. But what we do have is all your normal nuisance issues. If you're interfering with somebody's right of quiet enjoyment of property, it's a nuisance, and we can enforce however we have to prove it. The idea, though, the kind of elegance of the ordinance, hopefully, is if you are observing your setbacks and you're growing the right amount, you shouldn't create a smell. So if your neighbor smells a bunch of cannabis and is having a big problem with it, probably you're violating some other rule, and then we can force that straightforward. Hopefully, if your neighbor smells your cannabis, we can go look and you're not in your 300 square feet, or you're not observing your setback. And so hopefully it's restrictive enough that we can, as a per se nuisance, enforce. And again, this is always complaint driven. And a lot of these things are between neighbors, and hopefully neighbors can work things out. We made the 6 plants in movable containers. If you've got one neighbor that's really sensitive, move it to the other side of the yard. If code enforcement shows up and sees that you're too close, you can just move it. It doesn't have to be a big process or digging things out of the ground. The larger ones are in the ground, and just people are going to need to follow rules, and if not, there'll be harder punishment and enforcement. So that's that.
Great.
Anything the board has to offer, if the board wants to, go through it and go back through it and take motions on changes or consensus, or just if I hear complaints, if 2 of you aren't on board on the tax ordinance, I know I'm not getting the 4/5, and all of that is helpful to me.
Okay. I'd like to open it up to the board first, and if I can, Joel, I'd like to kick it off with you with an example that I learned while I was outdoor knocking here the last couple of weeks. I have a neighbor in my district that during the summer period, there's a fan that runs continuously that blows basically the smell of marijuana through their bedroom windows at night. It comes from a apartment complex per se, or basically a community living area. The distance of that complex to that resident's home, I just did a quick Google Earth line, 238 feet. Play out through what you just offered the board, how that resident goes through some corrective action based on what you're presenting.
So, first off, that sounds suspicious, right? It's probably not 100 square feet of grow space indoors. So the first thing, that I think that's probable cause for an inspection warrant to go in there and see. If it's really a small, appropriate grow, they're not going to need big fans to push it, 200 feet away. Even if they are, though, obeying every single strict rule, they're still interfering with their neighbors' quiet enjoyment of their property. And if they've got a fan, and code enforcement can take a picture of this fan, and they've got affidavits from the property owners around saying they can smell it, and they can show the distance, I don't think it's going to have any problem in a administrative hearing showing that that is a nuisance. I think that's actually a pretty easy one to enforce.
Okay, terrific. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, Joel, I got some questions about water usage. How do we address that on private wells, and there's other wells in the neighborhood, and they're using an excessive amount of water that's drawing these other wells down and possibly impacting neighbors?
That's something that's not addressed, other than, it has to be a permitted well. Short of putting meters on wells, it's extremely difficult to prove why a well would go down or how much water they're using. I haven't looked into, we didn't talk about that in the working group. We certainly can, and that can be an amendment at any time, what to do about that. I would say, though, that I think there's a specific situation you're thinking of, and that grow is huge, unpermitted greenhouses. It's absolutely a nuisance. So I don't know if we need to get into water. We should just enforce for other things. And I would hope that by and large that would be, like, hit 300 square feet, how much water could you use? I've seen pictures of greenhouses that are maybe 10 or 15,000 square feet. Those are nuisances for other reasons. And I would hope that we've crafted an ordinance that gives us the tools and the rules to not have to do something so kind of invasive and burdensome as insisting on meters on wells. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It doesn't fix the problem, but it makes sense, I guess. I mean, is there any liability involved there? Is that something that, I know it's hard to prove.
Yeah, can neighbors sue each other for unreasonable uses of water? I don't know. You get into some really interesting and strange things. Yeah, you have proof problems. So maybe, meters on wells if you want to grow cannabis is a thing that probably Heidi and Randy would be able to speak to better than I do. Definitely something.
That would be more of a problem, I think, with larger ones, larger grows.
Well, like Joel said, this particular instance, they're not in compliance probably with anything else.
When we get to a commercial cultivation ordinance, that's definitely something that we'd want, and there's water quality permits and things. The property that you're thinking of, I think, is also in a residential zone, and there's never in any of these conversations have we ever discussed allowing commercial cannabis cultivation in residential zones. So I'm hoping that that's not a situation we run into for other reasons. Other regulations we have keep us safe from those specific problems.
Thanks, Joel. Supervisor.
Joel, I appreciate your presentation today. You mentioned in your first part of your presentation that it would be difficult to add a tax afterward. That was the first question. So while we're thinking about that also, and none of this involves any ordinance regarding medicinal marijuana. Is that exclusive?
No. The working group's proposal is that the retail tax will only be recreational adult use. But the manufacturing and the cultivation taxes don't distinguish. They'll be on medicinal too.
Okay, and then again, what's the difficulty in revisiting this issue after? I know we're not taking a vote today. You're looking for direction.
Yeah. So if the board passes an ordinance and then it goes to referendum, the board will not be able to change who gets taxed or how much. Any adjustment the board wants to make that affects the tax base or the tax amount will have to go back to referendum. And so you're looking at an election cycle.
This is for November, the election in November.
Yeah, this one. I'd have to look a little more closely, but I'm pretty sure if we miss this shot, we're waiting until 2020 because it has to be a general election.
Thank you. Supervisor Cowan.
So I guess my question is, I just want to clarify. They're coming to us with a 2 to 6%. You want us to say a specific amount.
You don't necessarily have to say a specific amount. What I'd like is if you are going to vote against 2 to 6, tell us before we waste a lot of time and energy. If you'd wish it was 10, but it's not really a thing you care about, maybe it's not going to change. But if you kind of want to, make a motion to change that to 2 to 10,
Or bring the floor up. I think for me, it's more bringing the floor up.
That would be helpful too.
That 2 to 6 seems, a little bit broad. I was thinking more 4 to 6. I heard their reasonings why they brought it down to the 6, and it made sense to me. Because originally I was thinking 10 to 20, but after listening and reading and understanding better, I get that. I just think the floor is pretty low at 2.
Thank you.
So,
Supervisor
Mr.
Berkowitz.
Chairman, how do you want to proceed with this? Do you want to have us do a motion for a specific amount, or what would you like to do?
General consensus, Joel?
So anything works. However, I mean, a motion is kind of straightforward and clear. It gets people on the record. A motion to direct staff, I guess. Consensus also be good. But if just 2 of you say, I'm not voting for a 2% floor, that's still enough for us to make some decisions.
How does the board wish to proceed?
I don't support it. Not a 2 to 6, unless it's a punitive tax to discourage all of the activities. So I think you know where I stand. I've made my points clear before, so I can't support this.
So if any other one of you has a problem with this ordinance, it will fail. So we should know.
I have no problem with this.
I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem. The working group's done a great job, but I'd like to hear from the public too at this time, Joel, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open it for public comment at this time. Anybody wishing to speak on this item, please feel free to step forward at the dais.
Well, I'm opposed to having recreational marijuana. I think the medical marijuana and the 6 plants, there's plenty of pot for anybody. But in all of this discussion, I didn't hear children mentioned one time, or the age limits or anything. Can we have a little more explanation on that?
Sure, we'll revisit that, Paulette. But let's just get through public comment. Keep that in your notes though, Joel, please. Other public comment at this time?
I'm a little confused. Linda said 5th District. You guys are voting on taxation today?
No, we are not.
Oh, well, okay. Then I'll say what I want to say. I'd like to know if there's any insight to the retail portion of this coming up real soon before November, so that we are June. And, excuse me.
No worries.
Right now, it's my understanding that on June 30th, the ban goes in effect for recreational and medicinal marijuana. Is that accurate?
We'll revisit that with Joel.
Okay.
I'll take a note of
If it is, well, I hope people are out there listening, because there's people here that cried out to you folks a while back. This whole room was filled. And they come up and they told you their stories. And you slapped them in the face and put the ban on. So where was your compassion for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment at this time? Robert? Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Robert, District 1, the county, and I'm on the working group. Yeah, I just want to back you guys up on supporting the working group. You know, we spent a lot of time on this, and we've done a lot of give and take, you know, to kind of get to where we were at. You know, we were debating the 2 to 6, and, you know, I wanted 0 to, you know, and so we went back and forth on it, and I think we found like a range where we said, well, then the voter's going to decide, and you guys are going to decide, and you know, it takes a lot to get the board you guys put together is pretty varied. You know, I think I'm on the one end, and then you've got Blake Alexander on the other end, and so it takes you know, it's not the easiest thing to get a consensus, you know, amongst such a varied group, and you know, as far as some of the concerns about the children, you know, we're really finding that where cannabis goes, actually, the youth is actually kind of experimenting with it a little bit less. You know, there's a ton of rules that protect the children in the state law, you know, from child-resistant packaging, which isn't perfect, and it's something maybe we could mention the county could improve on a tiny bit. But you know, in general, we're seeing less kids use it, less opioids being used, less alcohol being sold, And there is a little bit of confusion, but actually seeing better traffic safety, where you go places where you have cannabis regulation. Distracted driving takes the lead in traffic fatalities versus states without cannabis regulation, where alcohol is the leading cause of traffic fatalities. And the water usage, I don't know if it'd be too much of a concern. I mean, someone certainly could probably use quite a bit of water there with a few hundred square feet, but I don't think it would be too much more of a concern than like an avid gardener, you know. Did I have anything else to say? And you know, I noticed Supervisor Gitlin bringing up, you know, as far as the sanctuary city and is against the Constitution. I've noticed him also saying this is the pot was an overreach of federal law. You know, there was a federal overreach at one of these last meetings, and so I'd like to see him, you know, grab onto that side. Your pledge to protect the Constitution. Consider the 10th Amendment. You know, Justice Thomas had dissented in the decision that basically found the Commerce Clause to trump states' rights, the 10th Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comment at this time? Okay, we'll bring it back to... Sorry about that. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Aaron Skroback, Del Norte County resident and registered voter. Prop 64 was voted on and approved by the majority of voters in every precinct and district of Del Norte on November 8th, 2016. 518 days, or 1 year, 5 months, and 2 days later, the only thing the Board of Supervisors have given back to their voters is a ban. Instead of adopting ordinances months ago, or at the very least given direction, we're still hearing the same rhetoric of excuses, scare tactics, blame shifting, and stall methods. The board has not listened to their voters when we spoke out repeatedly about not wanting a ban. Only stands to reason they are not listening now either. So my message isn't to the board, it's to the voters. The 2 board members seeking re-election, Chris Howard, District 3, and Gary Hemmingson, District 4, both voted for a ban on 3 different occasions. First to enact the initial 45 temporary ban, then to extend the temporary ban, finally this most recent permanent ban. 3 votes, 3 separate occasions, each for a ban. But yet they claim, and I'm quoting here, it is the intention of the Board of Supervisors that this prohibition will be repealed and comprehensive regulations will be enacted by December 12th, 2018. I believe what one does is what counts, and not what one had the intention of doing, because a person's actions will tell you everything you need to know. So just as a reminder to voters, June 5th is Election Day at the polls, 8 weeks from today. First day to obtain a vote by mail-in ballot is May 7th. Final day to register to vote is May 21st.
Thank you for your public speaking. Anybody else at this time? Hi, Eileen. Welcome back.
Hello. Hi. Two points to make. One, it's not what you grow, it's how you grow it. We have crops, a major crop in this county. Lilies are the most intensive, chemical-dependent, and highest threat to water quality in agricultural use that we have. So it's not what you grow, it's how you grow. And I would hope that cannabis would come forward and be a more benevolent crop, gentler on our salmon, put in the good buffers that we don't have right now, put in the incentives for green, unchemicalized growing. Put in some incentives. And I would just like to say, wow, it seems like all of a sudden there's motion going forward to get an ordinance in place that taxes, and now it's a race to the finish, and hey, may the best ordinance win. And I'm glad if this petition to get it, this cannabis ban lifted has put the fire under your wings, good. So I think the voters want a backup plan is a worst case scenario of nothing getting passed here by the board. And so I hope people take that insurance policy and sign up and see what happens. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment at this time? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Joel, there was a couple questions that we'd like you to address. One was posed by Paulette about children's protections.
Well, first off, the right to grow 6 plants is only for those over 21 and older. As far as extra regulations to protect children, I think the working group's feeling was that a growing plant isn't particularly dangerous. We're not right now talking about regulations on packaging or on concentrated cannabis or anything like that that probably does need some consideration of children. We're talking about people growing a garden, and people have to be decent, safe parents for other reasons and other laws. This doesn't need to be setting a standard for parenting. So that, I think, is where the board or the working group came out. I haven't seen in any other ordinances specific extra protections for children. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And then can you address Linda Sutter's question, also specific to recreational cannabis?
If I remember her question, it was about whether there's going to be a retail ordinance coming soon.
Correct.
Did I have that right? The retail ordinance is what the working group is working on now. I do think it'll be soon. I think it's largely about looking at maps and picking spots, and deciding intensities. I'd like to get these kind of moving in the pipeline, and the working group will continue working on retail, and it shouldn't be, I don't think it's going to be too far away.
Joel, also she keeps mentioning that medical, and it's my understanding that anybody who is part of a co-op can still get their medical marijuana. Is that correct?
Yeah, the ban is on commercial activity, and right now, under state law, anybody working on that co-op model is not commercial.
Okay, I know that, and I keep asking this question because as much as we say it, we have people out there spouting false information on the internet, and that's false information. Everybody who was here.
Ms. Sutter, please. Ms. Sutter, please. Thank you.
I'm letting you know, by law, it does not affect the co-ops. So everybody who came into the last time and was worried about not being able to get medical marijuana, that's just an incorrect statement. And I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Joel, please.
And that's all. I'll address the pesticide issue real fast because it's interesting. You know, the lily bulb farmers, you know, there's professional operators who get licenses for their pesticides. We're talking about people's gardens, you know, stuff you can buy at Home Depot. Stuff you'd use on your tomatoes or whatever is what's available to them. So there wasn't really a reason to start restricting or telling people how to grow those things. We're not talking about the dangerous stuff.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Joel at this time? Okay, very good. Joel was looking for some direction back to the working group, and I think at least there was 4 of us. Do we wish to take a poll vote on it at this time?
I think what the working group has put together works well. I think it's, you know, I feel the next process, right, is to go to planning. Is that correct? And I think it's, for me personally, the only issue I had, I didn't like that big variance from the 2 to 6, but I'm not going to say no against it because of that. I think they've done a great job, and I've listened to what they've done. Been to a couple meetings, and like Mr. Durator was saying, they've had a lot of conversations and to come to the conclusions that they have come to, and I think they're good ones.
Very good.
I think this is the process that I hoped we would have, where we could be presented with what this cannabis working group, wants to present to us, and then we can decide what it is that we want to do going forward, so that they will always have an idea of what we will accept, and then they can come back to us with specific proposals. So I think this is the best way to go about this, rather than having something prepared for us all the way at the end and then having that huge discussion. This way they know where we stand, we know where they stand.
Thank you, Supervisor. So, Joel, I think you pretty much have consensus on our earlier direction to move forward, at least a 4 to 5 consensus to move forward with the direction that you have given. Look forward to hearing back from the working group on the retail piece. I'm sure there's going to be considerable debate and discussion once it gets back to the board. Thank you for your presentation today, Joel. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward with item number 24, which is consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state or federal governments.
As far as legislation before you today, there are no additional letters that
Jay, could you pause for just a second, please?
Sure.
Seems to be a herd of elephants over here. White elephants. Thank you, Jay.
I want to thank everybody that stayed for my ledge report. I've been reviewing, there's approximately 19 bills right now that have been forwarded to us through RCRC. At this point, we don't have any additional support or opposed letters. We have a couple pending that could come forward, but they range from everything from price gouging during emergencies to agricultural and water, and so we are monitoring each of those, and we'll be bringing back any additional letters on the main agenda as far as any of the bills as they move forward, and we see some clarification on a few of those. There will be some that are amended, obviously. As far as the on the federal side, there is some movement in regards to MOU, which is called One Federal Decision, which would essentially speed up, if you want to call it that, or allow state agencies to have a designated, or federal agencies to have a designated lead agency, require them to. And then for that agency to complete the process within 2 years. 2 years is the key. The environmental process a lot of times takes several years, but the idea is that all of these agencies would sign into this MOU, and hopefully we would get a little bit more movement much quicker than we have in the past, but 2 years is still quite a while. As excuse me, as far as the budget, local budget, all of our departments have submitted their requests for this year, and we are setting up meetings as we speak with a lot of those departments. I will give you a heads up that there's a number of ideas coming forward that we'll be reviewing with the departments, and there are generally these ideas have some monetary consequences that go along with those. So as we review those, I may report out on those early just so you have a better idea, but until we are able to sit down with the department, it's a little preliminary. And that will go on now for the next probably close to a month and a half.
Thank you, Jay. Questions for Jay? Okay, public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Move on with item number 25, which is receive other brief reports, announcements relative to the County of Del Norte programs and projects, progress on 2x2 committees, goal committees, or board and staff traveling and training reports. Supervisor Cowan, could you please kick us off? Thank you.
Sure. Had a conference call with Annalee Medrano from Kamala Harris's office, discussing everything from last chance grade to high hospital costs. It was a good meeting. It really brings home the fact that some people really have no idea where Del Norte County is and what our issues are, and just how different we are from other people down in Sacramento. I had a meeting with Josh Clemens with the Board of Realtors, Jesse Davis, and Joel Campbell-Blair discussing cannabis and how it can potentially affect the real estate market and all those kind of setbacks and stuff we discussed. Meeting with the Area 1 Agency for the Aging. I know that Maggie's coming up, I think, on April 24th. That was the discussion we were having because it was such a busy agenda. I'm not sure if she got on it or not, or if she got pushed to May. With that said, I also want to invite Charlene from the Del Norte Senior Center, but I didn't push it for April because I knew you guys were packed. So, but I probably will make that phone call for May. It seems like that's what we're setting up now. I attended the Airport Authority meeting. The terminal is still on track for December. That was great. It was Matt's last meeting. I'm really to see him go. Sorry to see him go. Matt was really great for me this past year, as far as answering a lot of questions and educating me on everything that was going on at the airport. So I'll miss him a lot. Contour Airlines will be making its maiden voyage tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. So I'm really looking forward to that flight. That should be a fun day. I spent the last week playing tourist with my family who came in from Washington. There's truly a lot to do in Del Norte County, and I know for one, I get busy and I forget what's in front of us. We spent the day at the beach surfing. We went to Trees of Mystery, saw Kylan and Johanna, enjoyed, everything that they got to do, the Sky Rail and the cafe and the museum. Went to Ocean World, walked Walker Road, explored the beaches. It's just a really good reminder, how much we have here and how much we have to offer. So it was a pretty crazy busy week for me that way as well.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Gitlin.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a lot of county business to discuss, but I would like to share some of my observations I made on my recent trip to China, to Beijing, Xi'an, and Shanghai. I observed incredible dynamic growth. Building and development is ongoing and everywhere, and you see iconic skyscrapers pointing in every direction. This is a country very much upwardly mobile, and yet serves its 1.4 billion population, as far as I could see, this quite adequately. So I did see, and since this was a pleasure trip, there was nothing official about it, but I did see there was an opportunity for those products offered here in Del Norte County were sadly lacking in China, and there's something that we should be pursuing with regard to the opportunity to do business with the People's Republic of China. Of course, the purpose, again, was pleasure and not business, but my observations are certainly worthy of further explanation, and perhaps looking into products that are offered here and made here in Del Norte County to the People's Republic. And last night I attended the Candidates Forum in the Grange. I found the event to be well organized and fair. I would suggest, though, the picture presented by the incumbents is a little less than genuine. I keep asking myself the same question: are we better off 4 years ago than we are today? And my even stating I'm in disagreement with that risks the vitriol of those who accuse me personally of self-service. I'll take that risk, but the status quo is clearly to me not acceptable. And there must be change on this board as we function as we should as a board of 5 instead of a gang of 3. That's my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Berkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Supervisor Gitlin returned from China, he and I had a debriefing session on what he'd learned, and it seems that he came to the same conclusion when I came back from China, both times that I was there. We both discovered that there's a great opportunity for economic development utilizing Del Norte County agricultural products that could possibly be exported to Hangzhou and other areas in China. The contacts that I made when I traveled there with the Pismo Beach Chamber of Commerce and the trip that I made with the Han-Ban Minister of Education, paid for by the Chinese government, I think should be explored. In that light, I'd like to propose as an agenda item for the next meeting that a 2x2 committee be formed by the Board of Supervisors and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs of the People's Republic of China, with the chairman Heng Cheng-fu, and the two representatives represented by the Board of Supervisors be Mr. Gitlin and myself. This would be by email and telephone at this time and not involve any funds for travel to China. And I'd like to see if we can have consensus for that coming on the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Now, rest of my report. Since our last meeting, I've invited Cassandra Heseltine, the Executive Director for Humboldt-Del Norte County Film Bureau, to be the featured speaker at the noon Rotary Club, which she accepted. She stated that during the filming of the most recent movie starring Sandra Bullock, the crew spent over $750,000 right here in our county, which was a boon to our hotels and restaurants during the slow tourist time. I had a telephone conversation with Annalie Medrano, the staff person to Senator Harris, and I'm sure that she contacted most of the rest of you. Hopefully she got the same information from all of us. She wants the senator to reach out to rural areas of the state for their particular concerns. Naturally, of course, we discussed last chance grade, as we do at every opportunity that we get. Reauthorization of the Rural Schools and Communities Extension, and this is for the extension starting in 2019. We have to start on this already because the new legislation expires before 2019, and of course the financial situation concerning our harbor. I received several complaints from those residents on Darby and Dodane about the horrible condition of the road, their extreme flooding, the situation where they can't even drive to their residence. I attended the meeting of the Del Norte Republican Women, where I listened to the various candidates, and the Republican candidates state their positions for the upcoming elections for District 3 and 4. And of course, last night was a very informative candidates night in Fort Dick. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As continues on, a Wales Working Group conference call. I was invited to a smoking meeting, not to mean that we were smoking, but about smoking in Del Norte County. Mary Corcavalis had a story about living in a multi-housing unit and having the effects on her kids from neighbor smoking. That meeting was with Amber Weir and Mary, as I said earlier, and then later was by Amber, I was invited to the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Del Norte County, which I went to at a later date, but they want to talk about an ordinance restricting or eliminating smoking in multi-housing units. I basically offered my suggestions of the difficulty of enforcing that type of thing, but it's a discussion that we're going to have, and those discussions will continue on. Went to entirely too many funeral services over the last couple of weeks. Chuck Shad, who I've known for over 60 years, passed away, as you might know, the father of our auditor, Clinton Shad. A pretty sad deal. I went to the services for Ruby Barnes, who I've known the Barnes family for probably 50 years. And then I went to the services for Anne Marie Van Cat, which longtime family friends, again for 45, 50 years. So that was the sad part of my last couple of weeks. Had a meeting with stakeholders and staff on Congressman Huffman's Public Lands and Recreation Bill. I call it his Wilderness Bill. They've got a different name for it, but still they want to take land into wilderness. We've got some discussions on that, on how we can work that possibly to our advantage. Had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting, and as was mentioned, tomorrow is the inaugural flight to Oakland. Many of us are going to go down and check that all out, so pretty excited about that whole thing going on, as well as the airport terminal is continuing to move ahead. I'm sure the weather's not helping. And I went down to the Tall Ships and Pirate Days, I think, is that what it was, Pirate Days?
Pirate Festival.
Pirate Festival. Well, at the Pirate Festival down at the harbor. Seemed to be well attended. People seemed to be milling around in and out. Seemed like a pretty good event. And I last night I did participate in the Grange candidates meeting, and that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Supervisor. As Supervisor Cowan and Supervisor Berkowitz indicated, had discussions with Kamala Harris's staff, Senator Kamala Harris's staff, specific to issues of importance to Del Norte County and our legislative platform. Hoping to share that very soon in Washington, D.C. with everyone. Again, on our annual trip, we have not yet set that up yet, but we are in discussion to find the best date for it and then bring it to the board. The sat down with Geneva Wiki with California Endowment as our conversations continued around the summer youth program that started up last year, had a great involvement from the county, and looking to do it again this year. And it was approved today on our consent agenda. Thank you, board, for doing that. It really helps keep our youth active in our community and opens up a great deal of opportunity to them as part of their learning experience and actually working towards a career. Hopefully that will be in our community someday. Went to the grand opening at the Family Resource Center of our new food pantry. A lot of that funding was delivered through the City of Crescent City, through the Community Development Block Grant Program, bringing a great deal of opportunity to families now weekly to have access to healthy foods. It's a great thing. Hopefully there's a lot of families taking advantage of it, but they hope to be serving 300 families a month through that program. As Jerry mentioned, the memorial services were tough to be at here the last couple weeks. I don't know much more to say. It's been a tough week for all of us on the board, the passing of dear friends. Had some meetings with county council on some items of interest as it relates to the healthcare district and some Freedom of Information Act requests. And then also had a great deal of discussion with the Resource Conservation District here in our community around Morrison Creek, and some getting to resolution on mitigating for the flooding on Fred Hay Drive. We're very close to filing permits here in the county to do some aggregation removal above and below Fred Hay Drive, about 500 feet above and 500 feet below, as a more of a short-term temporary fix, and then at the same time seeking, with the direction of Mike Love and Associates, who's an engineer from outside our area that has been contracted with the RCD and the Smith River license, looking for a more long-term solution to that fix. What has happened there over many decades is the rerouting of two creeks into one, which has basically allowed for that volume of water now to be directed into one creek, which is now currently called Morrison Creek. That creek does not have capacity to handle those flows, and that's what we're seeing based on this report. How do we fix that? It's going to be pretty tough. in this day and age. But the county was able to resolve it over many years of aggregation removal of sediment loads within that creek. Hopefully we could get back into a pattern of doing so. Also, as Jerry mentioned, attended the Pirate Festival here in town, which was put on for Save Our Harbor event. I know we all spoke about that a little last night at the Candidates Forum, a worthwhile cause to bring attention to our harbors. It's such a beautiful place. And then just touch briefly on agenda review and end on the importance of Monday night and the community coming out to experience the delegation from Japan and their council and their community and their business members that will be here with us. There will be 20 of them. It's going to be a great experience for our community to enjoy. I hope you show up. There will be food and refreshments and the signing of the resolution. Hope to see you all there. And that being said, we'll close the meeting for today. Thank you very much. Wow. Didn't